And we said, we're going to make a documentary film about tapping. We knew it was getting really big in the United States, big in England, big in Germany, a lot of case studies, but nobody had filmed it before. And we created a documentary film in 2009, and that is what catapulted everything. Then we started doing online events and writing books, and here we are.
Today's guest is Jessica Ortner, and she's a New York Times bestselling author of The Tapping Solution for Weight Loss and Body Confidence. She's a stress reduction expert and one of the leading voices teaching EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, that combines ancient acupressure and modern psychology. Tapping has been clinically proven to reduce stress hormones, making it a powerful and easy tool to access to manage in times of our daily stress. And today I really wanted to do this episode because we're experiencing an overwhelming amount of stress in our society, with our families, our communities, and really the world at large in many ways. And so especially there's a lot of psychological stress, and having access to, for many people, new tools that we have access to instantly to help us to modulate and to deal with the stressors in our life. And also looking at some of these cool studies, some of this evidence is going to really trip you out that this is possible by utilizing the amazing body that we already have to help to reduce stress, to help us to make transformations even in our thinking. So I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. You might hear, it's Skype times. It's the time of the Skype. So you might hear a special appearance by her toddler in the background a little bit, but I promise you, you're going to walk away with a new insight and a new tool to add to your superhero utility belt. So let's jump into this conversation with the incredible Jessica Ortner. Jessica Ortner, my friend, I'm so happy to see you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Finally, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
I know, finally, right? I think, was it like 7 years ago, maybe? We met at Jim Quick's place. Do you remember that?
I remember it was this big Hollywood party. I didn't know anyone. You didn't know anyone. And we just like were magnets to each other. We're like, all right. I'm like, I found my person.
Right.
Yes. I'm going to have a good time. I found my person.
If you didn't say that today, I was going to say that. I literally thought that when we were going to talk today. Like when I found you there, I found my person. Because, like you said, it was this incredible mastermind and so many successful people. And I still lived in Ferguson, Florissant, Missouri. So even me coming there was super like out of my stratosphere. But then you and I, we just clicked up and we were good. It was a good time.
Oh, we had a great time. Yeah, for sure.
What do you remember? Do you remember anything from the event that really stuck out?
Yeah. You want to know my memory? It's not enlightening, but this is the truth. I remember we were having dinner and across from us was Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V. And we were talking about podcasts and about how if you put your photo on your podcast, it does better. And you made a joke and said, I even did mine shirtless. And then I said, oh, that's what I'm missing. And I remember everyone laughing, and you never know your audience, when you're kind of telling a joke, but everyone laughed and I was like, phew, that's my memory.
I remember, I didn't remember until this moment. It was there in my database. I literally remember that. And we were all collectively like, you know what? You'd win. Yeah. You'd win with that. But yep, Gary Vaynerchuk was sitting right next to me. It was like a wine tasting, and I'm not the wine guy, but it was just like a really cool experience. That's the thing about Jim too, is just getting cool people together.
And everyone was so nice. You see Gary V everywhere and you never know what it's like to actually meet him. And he was so nice and everybody was so humble and great. And I think as a kid, sometimes you get this belief that successful people are going to be snotty and, have a big ego. And it was great to be around these people who were just good people.
Yeah, that's a fact. And one other little fun fact, because just for folks just who is Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V? So he's a big entrepreneur, marketing, he's transferred himself into so many different domains of it too. Being a big influencer and people in the rap industry to major brands like Coca-Cola are looking to him for advice And I remember talking with him about, because his brand is the hustle. And we were talking about sleep. And he was like, and we talked about this because he's still playing the long game. So he's like, oh, I get my sleep. I know what the framing looks like, but that still means I can get, 7 hours of sleep, whatever the case might be. There are times to grind, but overall, if we're going to play the long game, we really got to focus on the sleep wellness. So that's what we were convoing about. So everybody has their appearance out here in the world, but we keep it real, especially here on the show. And this is why I'm so grateful to have you and why we clicked up and connected, because you're just a real person. It's so cool. And I want to talk about your superhero origin story. You've created this incredible movement with tapping, the tapping solution, this incredible brand, helped millions of people. But how did this happen? Where did this all come from? Where did you learn about it? Let's start there.
Great, thank you. I struggled in school since I was a little kid. I stayed back in second grade. I had a speech impediment. I didn't know how to read. And even though things improved, I always felt like if I had any type of success, I was faking it. So I would work really hard, but I always felt a bit less than. And I think we all have experiences in our childhood where we just learned something. We think we discovered that we're not enough. And so then in high school, I was really struggling and I started reading self-help books. And I was like, wow, this concept that you can read a book not that's assigned to you, but a book that you're interested in. And so I started reading everything from Tony Robbins to Wayne Dyer, and really realized that it wasn't that I was dumb or less than. It was that my mind, I think differently, and that I do have talents, that I am enough. I started this journey, but this voice of not being enough, and especially the anxiety, it was so physical and it was so conditioned that even though I would listen to positive things, listen to audiobooks, I still always had this level of anxiety that somehow I would be found out, right? Like this just imposter syndrome. And I discovered this technique called tapping because I was really sick one day and my brother came over, my brother Nick, and he said, listen, I learned a technique for anxiety. It's a little weird, but why don't we give it a try? And so he had me talk about what was bothering me while I began to tap on these acupressure points. And midway through, I mean, this is my older brother. He has been playing practical jokes on me since the moment I was born or could comprehend a joke. So like he had me tapping on the top of the head and I was like, wait, what? And he said, no, just give it a try. And when I really began to give a voice to how I felt and tap on these acupressure points that were calming my nervous system, it was like this weight in my chest lifted. It was a physical sensation. And so the anxiety that I had a hard time talking my way out of, I could feel it leave my body. I am a real overthinker. I can think myself into and out of problems. And the challenge with someone who is an overthinker is that we can then kind of ignore our body, or our body kind of takes over with this anxiety. Our anxiety isn't just in our head, it is a physical sensation. So having a technique that uses the physical body to release stress is incredibly powerful. So from that moment, I left school. We put a ton of money on credit cards. We ordered all of this camera equipment that showed up in my brother's little apartment. And we said, we're going to make a documentary film about tapping. We knew it was getting really big in the United States, big in England, big in Germany, a lot of case studies, but nobody had filmed it before. And so thank God there was YouTube. So we would like Google or we would YouTube how to work a light. And we created a documentary film in 2009, and that is what catapulted everything. Then we started doing online events and writing books, and here we are with an app. And so it's kind of all evolved from then. But that's the origin story.
Wow. And so many guests that have been on this show have been a part of the tapping solution. And even in that film, like Dr. Bruce Lipton, for example, it's been a tool so many people have used.
It was interesting when I started to read more about tapping. Do you remember the movie The Secret?
Of course,
Right.
yeah.
So this was the best-selling film DVD. This was back in the DVD days, I think in
Right.
history. And I remember watching it. And as I began to reach out to these different experts that I liked, I realized that so many experts that I looked up to were using tapping privately. They were using it as a way to address any limiting beliefs and any anxiety and stuff that they were feeling. And so that movie really inspired us to bring in some of those experts in.
I got to point this out because this is just so cool. Like, you shared your story and being held back in the second grade. And my son just finished second grade, he's in third grade right now. And just to think about that dynamic, because you were so much in your character at that point, and just the impact that that would have had. And but from you growing from that place, and then you come across books, Tony Robbins, Wayne Dyer, you literally have a New York Times bestselling book today, and also the same publisher as Wayne Dyer, the books that you were reading back in the day being with Hay House. Like, come on, like, that's so freaking amazing, Jess. That's awesome.
Thank you. It feels like such a blessing. And I think the challenge sometimes is when we begin to start reading about personal development, we want to figure everything out at once. And so
Yeah.
I started reading and I wanted like my 5-step plan. I wanted to know exactly where my future would lead. And one of the things I discovered is that sometimes even achievement comes with anxiety, right?
Yeah.
And if we have that anxiety, what happens is we actually just can't think clearly. And I know this is something that you know, but when we're having anxiety, even towards a goal, even towards good things, sometimes we get the job we want and we have overwhelming amounts of anxiety. There's a part of our brain that's firing off that fight or flight response. There's a part of our brain that's saying, there's something about this that doesn't feel safe because we love the familiar. And so in that place, it's not about pushing through and almost forcing positive thinking. It's actually about taking a step back and going, all right, what is my body feeling? What is this anxiety? And let me address this. Let me take a moment to let my body know that it's safe. And the moment you do that, something amazing happens. You tap into your intuition. You get that idea. Like Einstein would always say that he would get the best ideas shaving. And I don't think it was his shaving cream. I think we have moments in the day when we're relaxed and we get those ideas. And that is what tapping helped me with, because the benefit, there's so many benefits of learning these techniques at a young age and learning about self-help and personal development. But the dark side for me personally is I also made it like, if I'm not positive all the time, then I'm not enough. If I'm not achieving, then I'm not enough. And so it was really a journey for me to kind of balance the knowledge I'm getting in about achievement, but also realizing that I have to look at my own beliefs and my own anxiety, because the best information I'm going to get is from my own intuition. And you can't connect to that intuition unless you're feeling calm and feeling in control.
And when you say this, it is like me being a very analytical, logical person, like seeing is believing is kind of my tendency. And seeing the data on this that you guys have compiled, it is unbelievable. Like the stress hormone, the cortisol study, for example, that you guys put together. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's been so many studies recently. When I started the film, there wasn't a lot of studies at all. It was spreading because it was working, but studies take a lot of money, right? And
Yeah,
as
a
tapping
lot.
began to spread, then it started to get into more universities and people becoming curious because of this movement. And so the research has been amazing. There was a study, which this is actually the second study on this. So it was replicating a study from 2012. Now in 2020, they did this study on cortisol. Cortisol, we often know it as the stress hormone. It's easy to measure. You can measure it within your saliva. And they had a group that was using tapping. They had a group that was reading about stress relief. So they were opening the book and they were reading about strategies. And then the third group was the control group, and they were just reading a magazine. And after an hour, what they found is that the control group, the cortisol actually went up by 2%. I think which I find funny. I think nowadays you open any magazine and you see
Right.
stressful news. So they got actually more stressed. The people who read about stress relief did have a reduction. It was 19%. So that's a pretty big number. The people who were using the tapping, the reduction was 43%. So here we're seeing how the body is reacting. 43% reduction in cortisol.
That is so powerful because again, this isn't well, which first of all, we need to talk about this because objective measurement has been the tendency, right? If we could see the numbers, we got the monitors and all these things, but how important subjective measurements are and how we feel. There's not another metric that's more important than that. But to have both, it's just it hits on all those notes of our minds of like, this is actually a really valuable tool that we all have access to today because we have a body. That's the only prerequisite, and just learning some of the techniques. And so if you could, let's dive in a little bit more right now and talk about, okay, so tapping, what is tapping? You've been saying this term, acupressure points, and maybe we can do a little bit of it.
Absolutely. So it's called tapping or EFT, emotional freedom technique, because you're tapping on these acupressure points. So you're using 2 or 3 fingers and you're gently tapping on spots that are on your face and your torso. There's 9 spots. You have acupressure points all over your body, but they found that these 9 points really help you relax. They're easily accessible and they're easy to remember, which is key because it means anyone who learns these 9 points can use it anytime they're feeling stressed. The key with tapping is actually getting clear on the thought that's creating the physical response. So we touched on this before. You have a stressful thought. It could be about a new job. It could be about something good. It could be about something bad, financial uncertainty. That thought doesn't just live in your head. You suddenly feel it like a pressure in your chest or a knot in your stomach. So it's getting clear on the thought that's creating the physical response. And we really want to bring that up. And as you start tapping, you always start with the setup statement, which you tap on the side of the hand. And this statement just sets you up for the process. It's what you do before you go fully into the tapping. And it's simple. You say, even though, and you state how you feel. So even though I feel all of this anxiety around my finances, I accept how I feel. Tapping is this beautiful combination of these ancient acupressure points and modern psychology. And the psychological aspect of it is that oftentimes we fight our feelings. Like we just want to push it down. We just want to move on. Our feelings want to be felt. So if we don't feel our feelings in a productive way, we get the headache, we get the stomach ache, we get the sleepless nights. Our body, if we're not feeling these feelings, will begin to feel for us. And so by saying to yourself, even though I'm anxious, I accept how I feel as you tap, you stop fighting the feeling, you stop the resistance, and then you can have a real honest conversation with yourself as you tap. Then you tap on the rest of the points and you give a voice to how you feel. So it's as simple as saying this anxiety in my chest, all this pressure, all of this overwhelm. You're tapping, and one of the things that we do, actually to back up a little bit, is before we tap, we like to measure 0 to 10, how intense you feel. So 10, very intense, 0, you feel fine. It's called the subjective units of distress. We do it for 2 reasons. One, because sometimes people go from a 10 to a 2, and then they're like, I wasn't even that angry. And you're like, your face was red and steam was coming out of your ears. Like, it's nice to be able to see the difference. But also because it's encouraging to see, oh, I went from a 9 to a 7. Okay, can I do a little more tapping? How can I move this number down? When we're above a 5 in particular, we really want to stay with how we're feeling. But if we get to the point where we're feeling better, we can begin to bring in more positive statements. We can move towards how we want to feel. But the key is the body, because if you suddenly say to yourself, I'm okay and everything will work out, and your whole body is like, that's BS. Your whole body feels stressed and it's like, you're a liar. You're moving too fast. You're not honoring the reality of how you're feeling. So you only want to bring positive things in when they have a place to land. you have to weed before you plant that seed. So as much as we have these great ways of reframing our problems, especially people who listen to this show and read, you know in your head how to logically talk to yourself to change your mind. But now let's get the body involved. And to do that, we have to have that honest conversation. So that explains it a little bit, but we can have an experience so people can get a better understanding of what it looks like and what it feels like.
All right, there's so many different things, of course, that we could be addressing, that we're experiencing right now. Like you said, this was so powerful. I wrote it down. Our feelings want to be felt. Oh my goodness. And there's so many feels, like it's all the feels that people might be experiencing right now, that could be good. But it might be anger. It might be anxiety. It might be sadness. There's a lot of different emotions that everybody listening, you might be experiencing. But I think there's like an overriding feeling right now with anxiety. So I think, and of course you guys got data on helping to reduce symptoms of anxiety. So I would love if you can walk us through a tapping session and we'll target anxiety.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So let's just check in with ourselves. So for those who are listening, if you can find a place to sit down, a place that you won't be disturbed, or you can note what time this is at and come back to it. But you really want to give yourself the space to tap. Let's check in and notice any anxiety that you're feeling and how it might be showing up in your body. Maybe it's tension in your shoulders, pressure in your chest, or tightness in your stomach. Take a nice deep breath in and notice if your breath feels a little restricted. And give a number to that anxiety, that tension, on a scale from 0 to 10. It's not about having a perfect number. It's all subjective. So just what number comes to mind when you think about how you're feeling. And we're going to do it quick in general. We'll just have a quick experience. Let's tap on the side of the hand. And this is right underneath the pinky. So I'm using my left hand to tap on my right hand. It doesn't matter what side of the body you tap on. Okay, so this is the karate chop point, also known as the side of the hand. And as we go through this, I'll talk you through where the points are if you're listening to this and not watching it. So side of the hand, just Shawn, if you can repeat after me, and for those who are listening, repeat out loud or in your mind, even though I'm feeling this tension in my body.
Even though I'm feeling this tension in my body.
I accept these feelings.
I accept these feelings.
And I give my body permission to relax.
And I give my body permission to relax.
Even though there's a lot going on in my life.
Even though there's a lot going on in my life.
And there's a lot of uncertainty.
And there's a lot of uncertainty.
I acknowledge all of these feelings.
I acknowledge all of these feelings.
Even though I'm holding on to this anxiety in my body.
Even though I'm holding on to this anxiety in my body.
I accept myself and how I feel.
I accept myself and how I feel.
So that is the setup part of the process. Now we're going to tap on the eyebrow point. It's where the hair of your eyebrow begins. I use my two hands. So tap, 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 and repeat after me. This tension in my body.
This tension in my body.
Now follow your eyebrows until you're on the side of the eye, right on the bone. There's so much going on.
There's so much going on.
Under the eye, on the bone. I feel this uncertainty in my body.
I feel this uncertainty in my body.
Under the nose, between the nose and upper lip. And I'm so used to this stress.
And I'm so used to this stress.
Under the mouth, that's the crease between the lower lip and the chin. Because part of me believes.
Because part of me believes.
That in order to change.
That in order to change.
I need to feel this stress.
I need to feel this stress.
Then the collarbone point, if you feel your collarbone, you go down an inch on either side, you're going to hit it. Got it, Shawn. I've been holding on to this stress.
I've been holding on to this stress.
Under the arm, it's an arm width from your armpit. For women, it's where your bra strap lies. Because part of me believes.
Because part of me believes.
It would be irresponsible to not feel stressed.
It would be irresponsible to not feel stressed.
Right on the top of the head, holding on to all this anxiety.
Holding on to all this anxiety.
We're going to do another round now that you know the points back to the eyebrow point. Because part of me believes,
Because part of me believes
side of the eye, that I have to feel the stress.
that I have to feel the stress.
Under the eye. But what if I can be responsible?
But what if I can be responsible?
Under the nose and let this stress go.
And let the stress go.
Under the mouth, right now and right here.
Right now and right here.
I am okay.
I am okay.
Collarbone, right now and right here.
Right now and right here.
It's safe to release the stress.
It's safe to release the stress.
Under the arm, I trust that I'm where I'm meant to be.
I trust that I'm where I'm meant to be.
Top of the head, and I'm open to new possibilities.
And I'm open to new possibilities.
All right, take a nice deep breath in and exhale. Now, what we just did there, usually when we tap, we do maybe 10 minutes, 6 rounds, but we just did 2 to get comfortable with the process. And we started again with acknowledging how we're feeling, and it's helpful to look at why might you be holding on to that feeling subconsciously. A lot of us believe, well, if I'm not stressing about my finances, it means I'm not taking it seriously. If I'm not stressing about my weight, it means I really don't want to change. I need this panic. And what we're beginning to understand is that we don't need panic to change. That if we can give ourselves permission to feel good before anything changes, we can better access our creative thinking, our resourcefulness, and navigate whatever we have in front of us in a better way.
So good. So I want everybody to check in and see where they go on that number scale from 1 to 10. Where did you start and where you at right now?
Perfect. And I'll mention too is if you're ever tapping and suddenly the number goes up, it's actually a great sign. Sometimes we're so disconnected by how we feel that the moment we let ourselves sit down and check into that anxiety, that number can go up because finally it's like, okay, you're paying attention to me. This is the feeling. And that's actually a good thing. That means that you're really on point. It's not about saying the perfect words. It's about tuning into the physical sensation and the feeling so that you're tapping. Because what we're doing with tapping, we didn't really touch on this yet, but what you're doing is that you're sending this calming signal to your brain. Your brain is saying, you're not safe, you're not safe. Now your body's relaxing, sending that calming signal. So you're able to have that disempowering thought, but feel more relaxed in your body. And when you can have a disempowering thought, but feel relaxed, that thought doesn't have control over you. That's when you can decide, is this really true? And you can try to think differently. When thoughts get stuck is when they come with a physical sensation and we just can't move past it. Does that make sense?
Of course. Oh my goodness. But our feelings want to be felt.
Our feelings want to be felt.
You know, I think again that we tend to package up our feelings as right and wrong, right? We label them. We don't want to feel these things, but our feelings are giving us valuable feedback. You know, maybe some potential action we need to take, or just like to be able to know where we are, you know, in reality. But
Yeah.
I think, again, we tend to suppress those feelings or emotions with busyness, with maybe food, with alcohol, with distraction and social media, you know, Netflix till you die. There's somebody out there trying to complete Netflix. It's their goal to get to the very end of every content piece on there, you know. And that's the thing, you know, we live in such a time that we are often not feeling the feelings, you know, and really paying attention to what our bodies, because our body is infinitely intelligent, is trying to direct us towards action.
Yes. I have to share something that I find fascinating about the research, a study that came out last year, which was showing brain scans before and after tapping when it came to cravings. So cravings are a physical sensation. You feel like you can't help it. You really want it. But there is an emotional component to craving almost every time. And if we can start to notice when we're craving the food. It's usually when we're craving pleasure, we're craving a break, we're craving some relief. Food is sometimes the only thing that we have to make ourselves feel good because we're not prioritizing self-care. So suddenly you tell someone to eat healthy and go on a diet, you're taking away the one thing that's making them feel good, which is food. So you have to look at other ways to feel good, or else what's going to happen is every time you see that food, your brain is going to fire off like pleasure. I need that. I'm craving that. And so in this study, they took women who were obese, clinically obese, and they put them in an MRI scan, and they showed them photos of those foods that they crave. So they showed them the chocolate, the salty foods, and you can see these images of their brains lighting up like fireworks. And then they had a few weeks later, they did tapping for the cravings. They brought them in. Again, they showed them the same photos, and the women were saying, I don't have that craving anymore. And the thing about craving, it's not that you never want to have chocolate again. It's that you don't have the physical impulse that makes you feel like it's not a decision anymore. You want to be able to decide you want chocolate. You don't want your body and your emotions to hijack you to get that chocolate. And so they were saying, I feel in control again. That craving's not so strong. And you see it in the brain scans. They put them back in the MRI, and you see that those parts that were lighting up are no longer lighting up as they're seeing that food. And so it's amazing to see that people have been saying, oh, it helps so much with cravings. It's super exciting to actually see the brain scans, and I can share that for your show notes as well. But all of these things, like, I love the work that you do, and I think it's so important to eat smarter, and we need the knowledge, and we also need the emotional support to help make those decisions easier. And it goes both ways. Food impacts emotions. Emotions impacts food. So we have to look at it at both ends.
This is so good. This is talking about real healing, right? And so there's so many things I want to talk with you about. And next up, we're going to talk about body image. All right. Our perception of ourselves and our bodies. And this is obviously is such a big issue today, more so than it's ever been in history, because you have infinite ability to compare ourselves to others. We have infinite ability to completely be inundated by images of what we think we should be or we're supposed to be. And this particular thing affected you early on, and it really had a big impact on your life. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I started struggling with my weight when I hit puberty, but bigger than that was just my own body confidence, my own self-worth. And I realized later on that it wasn't just me. My mother struggled with it, and my grandmother struggled with it. So when I started to learn about tapping, I would not use it to address my emotions and feelings about my body, because I didn't want to address body confidence. I just wanted weight loss, right? Like, I just was so committed to that story that if I could look a certain way, then I could feel good enough. And so I avoided it and I avoided it. And a lot of really tough things happened along the way. I had a mentor who I really looked up to say to me, you know, you're fat, right? And no one's going to listen to what you have to say until you lose weight. I was 20 years old. And as shocking as that sounds, Shawn, I have to be honest. Unbelievable. But I said that to myself every single day. I literally I outwardly manifested the person who was reflecting what I was saying over and over and over again of, I won't be enough until I lose weight. I won't be able to speak up until I lose weight. And I would run this pattern where I would panic myself to eat healthy. So I would read all the health books and I'd buy all the things, and I would push and force myself to eat a certain way. And for a short time, it works. You know, you lose a few pounds and you're like, okay, I got this. But then something stressful happens, or just life takes over. And all of a sudden you're back to the binge eating. You're back to using food is the only way to relax. And you run this pattern, and then you get back to the panic, and then it works for a little bit, and then, you just fall off again. And I really had to look at my emotions around my self-worth and my emotions around my body. It is very easy to take care of something that you value. There are people who love their cars and they're always freaking washing their car, right? Like you like to take care of that thing that you love. If you hate your body, it's going to be very hard to take care of it. I hated my body. So exercising and taking care of it was like punishment. It was a constant reminder that I wasn't enough. And so I really had to look at my beliefs around my self-worth and my weight, and breaking it down to seeing, okay, well, what's happening when I'm binge eating? What's the emotional aspect of that? What's the emotional aspect of actually losing weight and still not feeling good enough? That's a tricky thing, right? You kind of get to that goal for a little bit and you still don't feel good. What do? Well, you're just you're holding your breath, waiting for the next shoe to drop because you know you're going to gain the weight again. And so I had to look at how I was treating myself and the beliefs I had about my body, because I have this body for the rest of my life until I die. So it's not a 30-day plan, right? This is a life commitment. This is a relationship. So I had to look at that relationship and those beliefs that I had. And I brought up earlier that I saw that my mother had these challenges and my grandmother had these challenges. And the reason I bring this up is I'm 6 months pregnant right now and I found out it's a baby girl.
Oh my goodness.
When I was in this journey of saying like, I got to look at things differently, I kept thinking, I was completely single. I wasn't in a relationship. There wasn't a baby on the horizon. But I realized that the way, especially women, torture themselves, it's often generational. And even though my mother would always tell me I was beautiful, and she would always tell me I'm enough, I never felt it, because you don't listen to what your parents say, you watch what your parents do. And so by seeing the way my mother would treat herself and how my grandmother would treat herself, and all the negative self-talk, all the pressure, always needing to be the martyr, all these responsibilities, I took that on. And I realized that me working on my relationship with my body wasn't just about me. It was about breaking this generations of pain, right? It's about changing the conversation women in particular are having in this culture, right? And it's more than just my body. It's this movement of saying, I want to be able to see my value no matter what shape and size. And the irony is that when you focus more on the process of loving, like finding pleasurable ways to take care of yourself. Like I often say, if it's not pleasurable, it's not sustainable. If you focus on how to love yourself and how to address those negative voices, it is more than just about you. It has a ripple effect on the world. And the irony is oftentimes you do lose the weight, but you don't even care, because it's not even about that anymore, because your self-worth isn't tied to a number on the scale. It wasn't something that happened overnight. I had to commit to saying, all right, I'm going to look at my relationship with myself and my body. And that led me to write a book called The Tapping Solution for Weight Loss and Body Confidence, where I really break up, I break it up, the journey that I went on. But if we can't criticize ourselves thin, and we can't hate ourselves happy. And that's the biggest thing I had to get into my head, is that real change comes with self-love and self-care. That's the only way that you have sustainable change.
There's so much should be common sense here, not trying to hate ourselves into health. Those two just don't even match up. They don't even resonate. Pleasure is a big driving force. That sounds healthy. That sounds like something sustainable and beautiful, expansive, versus depriving yourself and abusing yourself into wellness. It just doesn't make sense. So thank you so much for sharing that. And also, you brought up seeing the behavior pattern, even if you're not conscious of it, for folks that are listening, from our parents, right? And this gets into the conversation about this genetic determinism, right? You've got once we discovered that we have these genes create our personality, these genes create our levels of health and disease. But one of the people, again, I mentioned him earlier, Dr. Bruce Lipton, really pioneer in epigenetics and how our environment controls our genetic expression, internal and external environment. And especially, and he wrote the book, The Biology of Belief, our thoughts influence our biology immensely and have that. So we would see our mother having this behavior and we'd replicate it. It's just like, oh, it's in my genes. We're all angry. We're just angry. It's in my genes. That outpicturing, of even happiness is found to be the genetic component. It's like going to be like a hard, maybe 5 or 10% at the most. The rest of it is all depending upon your choices in your environment. And so another one of the studies that you guys put together looked at how tapping actually positively influences the expression of like 72 of our genes. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, after 1 hour. So this was a pilot study and it compared an hour-long EFT tapping session with a placebo session. And they found that it changed 72 genes. Now, this is all new to me. I'm not an expert. We can call Bruce Lipton. I'm not an expert in this, but what's fascinating, what I discovered about genes is that genes are turned on and off. So just because you have a certain gene or something runs in your family doesn't mean that that gene's going to express itself. And so things that kind of, if you have certain genes, certain things from your family that could be negative, well, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have that experience. It's going to depend on stress and diet and the environment that Bruce Lipton talks about. So here we're seeing that when you change the environment, you change the stress level in your body, that it actually shows up in your genes. It suppresses genes that are associated with cancer tumors. It regulates type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance and antiviral activity. I'm going to give you the paper to share with everybody, but you're able to see 72 genes are impacted. And it really goes back to what Bruce talks about, which is the environment, and stress creates the environment in your body, right? Your beliefs create that environment in your body.
Yes. And so we're going to put this compilation of studies for everybody in the show notes along with this episode, which you can access on most podcast apps, or if you need to, go to themodelhealthshow.com, check out the podcast section, and you'll see this incredible episode with Jessica Ortner. And this is super important to me because, again, we're living at a time right now where we've never been so inundated with the belief that we are not enough, that we're not capable, that we're victims. You're a victim of everything that's going on. You have no power. And even if we have a strong sense of self and strength, it could start to really chip away at you. And especially this idea that, kind of my life is determined. My immune system is incapable of doing a job. And in this particular study found that it actually helped to increase immunity and immune cell parameters and also decreasing inflammation. And right now, a lot of people, what's on their mind is a pro-inflammatory issue that has a tropism towards our lung tissue and inflammation there. We can decrease inflammation, decrease our susceptibility to all manner of chronic diseases, infectious diseases by really learning how our minds and bodies work. Because truly, our mind, as you've been alluding to, it is the most powerful pharmacy in the universe. Like, it's creating, every thought we have has correlating chemistry. And all of our feelings, this is all based on all of these things in our perception, and giving us techniques to allow us to feel the feelings, bring them up, address them, but also create a positive template of what direction we want to go in clarity. Doing the exercise with you earlier, like I wasn't really feeling a high level of it, but I felt better, even just during, like, I actually kind of wanted to just snuggle up a little bit. I was just feeling really so much better. So
yeah. We're facing incredibly uncertain times, more than ever before. And anxiety comes from uncertainty and a lack of control. Let's talk about this pandemic, talk about uncertainty and a lack of control. So now we're feeling this stress. And oftentimes there's this belief of, well, if I'm not stressed, I'm not taking it seriously. Or like, there's crazy stuff happening. Like, I should be stressed. But the challenge is right now more than ever, we need resourcefulness, we need creativity, we need innovation. And none of those things we can access from that state of stress and panic. And so we have to make this a priority now more than ever before. Like humanity depends on us being able to think clearly so we can think our way out of these problems. And we can't think clearly unless our body is feeling safe so that our brain is fully online.
I love that. Online, get tapped in. That just made me think of the Matrix. So can you let everybody know, I've got the app. Can
Yes.
you let everybody know about the app and of course where they can get it and what they're going to get when they get the app?
All right, friends, listen, you have to download this app. It is phenomenal. It is free. It's a free download, and there's free tapping meditations to help you get started. It's called the Tapping Solution app. You can find it on iTunes or Google Play. Let me share some quick stats. We have a releasing anxiety tapping meditation. It's 9 minutes and 15 seconds. So this isn't 30 minutes. This is less than 10 minutes. We've had over 540,000 people play this, and the average decrease of anxiety is 41% in 10 minutes. 41% in 10 minutes. We have, that one is free. We have Quiet My Racing Mind, which you do before bed. It's part of the sleep support, also free. 300,000 plays. It's under 10 minutes, 43% decrease in intensity. So you can have an experience, give yourself just 10 minutes. It's completely free. If you are a healthcare provider or a teacher, we give out free memberships. So I'll give you the link for that too, Shawn. Just our way to say thank you. And we have a whole section for veterans that's in the app that's free all of the time, mostly because it has spread with veterans. They're kind of our biggest fans, our biggest advocates, because they know that when you're dealing with stress and PTSD, it's very much a physical sensation, not just in the brain. And so we have some great support within the app as well. And so the key is support. There's so many therapists as well who tell their clients, hey, here's a tapping meditation to do between sessions, right? There's room for all of this. We want to get all of the support. And if you can take 10 minutes to calm your mind and body, then amazing things will happen.
Amazing things have happened today. Being able to hang out with you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And wow, this is just so awesome. Thank you. This is such a great opportunity and conversation, and to provide some tools right now at a time when, again, we can take a little bit more ownership and responsibility of what's happening with our own world, with our own inner world. So you're the best. Thank you so much for that.
You are the best. Thank you.
I've got one final question for you. What is the model that you're here to create for the rest of the world, for other people, with how you live your life personally?
So the answer that comes to mind, and I hope it's answering the question, is I've always felt like my mission is to let people's hearts know it's safe to change. And that's the mission for myself, is to let my heart know that it's safe to change, because growth is change and reaching new heights is change. And sometimes success can be just as scary as failure. But if we can feel safe making changes, speaking up, doing more, if we can feel safe in our body doing that, we're going to continue to take the next step. It's not about pushing. It's not about forcing. It's not about critiquing. It's about letting our mind and body know that we are safe to change.
Jess, you are indeed the best. I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you.
Everybody, Jessica Ortner. Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here. And also make sure to subscribe.
And people think depression is because of a chemical imbalance in your brain. It really isn't. The number one thing that causes depression are harsh, hurtful, critical words that you say to yourself on a daily basis.